So today I want to talk about the story that many of you have probably heard of. This British woman, her name is Lily Phillips. She is a OnlyFans, performer, or I don't know what's how you would call her, performer or talent or entertainer, who famously just slept as part of some documentary with 100 guys, and apparently this was a training for eventually sleeping with 1,000 guys, and this is contiguous, right? It's not what the kids now call body count, meaning over a lifetime or up to now in your life. This is you begin and you sleep with whatever the desired number that you want to reach. And so there's a lot to talk about here. There's stuff that we could talk about from an evolutionary perspective, from a moral perspective, from a germ contamination perspective. There are many different angles. Earlier today, I posted a post about this thing, and so that's what got me thinking that maybe it might be a good idea to discuss it a bit. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is this idea that, who are we to judge, right? I mean, why do you judge? Please don't judge, right? And so there is a passage in The Parasitic Mind, for those of you who have read it, and if you haven't read it, I urge you to do so. On page 175, where I'm talking about a call to action, the idea being that in The Parasitic Mind, I was saying that a lot of times what stops people from fighting back against parasitic ideas is that they're afraid to judge. And so very much here you'll see a lot of people who, instead of judging what Lily Phillips has done or what the 100 men who decided to partake in this, I guess literally an orgy, we shouldn't judge them. Sex positivity, who are we to judge, right? And so let me read for you what I said about this as I said, on page 175 of The Parasitic Mind. It's almost the entire page. So I'll read it and then I'll say a few other things. In a similar way, many well-intentioned individuals are too afraid to judge others. The Cambridge Dictionary lists the following synonyms and related words for non-judgmental: open-minded, enlightened, free-thinking, inclusive, liberal, live and let live, an idiom, permissive, society, and tolerant. Right? So not judging is a good quality. Recall the colloquialisms that speak to this aversion to judge. Who am I to judge? I'm not one to judge. No judgment. Where does this reticence stem from? The West is founded on a bedrock of Judeo-Christian traditions, and many assume, as per Christian theology, that judging others can be a sin. Several Gospels contain edicts against judging others. In the Pericope Adulterae, John 7:53 and 8:11, Jesus says, quote, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her," in reference to the imminent stoning of a woman who has committed adultery. And in Matthew 7:1-2, one finds, quote, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." In Luke 6:37, we have, quote, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." Finally, James 4:12 posits, quote, "There's only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor?" Close quote. Many people interpret these teachings as implying that the act of judging is divinely forbidden, a cosmic command to live and let live. But this is incorrect. These edicts are referring to moral hypocrisy. People who spew falsehood should be judged. I do it every day. By the way, I've been a member of many scientific societies, one of which is the Society for Judgment and Decision Making. In other words, it's perfectly natural. It is part of being human to judge right? We judge which car we're going to choose. We judge whether a position that we hear is right or wrong. We judge whether this is the right type of friend to have. So there's nothing inappropriate, ungodly, immoral about judging. I judge all day long. I have a very huge following, because I judge people, right? Now, it's not because I'm an opinionated, dogmatic ass. It's because it makes perfect sense if you're going to be involved in social commentary to judge. People who are interesting to listen to, people who are authors who are interesting to read, are precisely those who take positions, right? They don't equivocate. They're not fence sitters. The world is not shaped by those who say, but who am I to judge? I could see the pros and cons of both sides. No, no, no. I judge, MFer, okay? When I don't think that I've got the necessary information to be able to defend why I should judge, well, then I withhold judgment. But the idea that we should always be tepid as we navigate through social dynamics is complete nonsense. So let me begin by judging, and then I'll talk about some evolutionary angles. My, you know, I think it's a tragedy what this girl is doing. You saw it after she had sex with the 100 men. She appeared. She's trying to be stoic, right? She's trying to put on the, militant feminism, sex positivity. I love sex, and I'm in control, and I'm in power. And what's wrong with that? By the way, I'm going to read you in a second a passage from my latest book on happiness. Regarding this kind of stuff. I'll read it in a minute. But this idea that, it's all positive and I'm in control, you see how she's utterly broken in her soul as she comes out of this marathon of orgiastic sex, right? No human being has evolved to sit in one seating or lie in one seating and be ravaged by 100 men. Unless, of course, you're at a Diddy party, in which case it's all good. But one thing that and this is not me trying to be, equal in my moral aversion or repulsion, but the 100 men who said, yeah, sign me up for that, are true degenerates. Because for me, maybe my theory of mind compass is too active, but I always try to say, what if this were my daughter? What if this is someone I know? So I could never imagine my libidinal drive being so activated that I could somehow shut off the inner voice that says this seems grotesque, that I could not engage in such an act. And by the way, I've been in situations when I was a soccer player where we would travel places. I mean, it wasn't 100 guys, but where there'd be some real debauchery going on. And I never partook in it. Not because, I'm the Buddha, but because it just never interested me to be this kind of orgiastic animal. Believe me, it's hardly that I'm puritanical. I've been in locker rooms. I can mix it up with the best of them. But this idea that you'd be willing to, I just want to be able to have sex. And so therefore, let me line up in an orderly queue of 100 men. Okay, so if you participated in this, so forgetting about Lily Phillips, you're a degenerate. You're a moral pig. You have no sense of goodness in you. Because again, your desire to, forgive me for saying it very bluntly, have a very ephemeral orgasm supersedes anything else that could otherwise be inside your head. You're a psychopath. You're a maniac. Okay? So let me tick that off because I've got a little list here of things I want to remember. Okay, by the way, let me just mention, so I am someone who is incredibly germophobic. So I'll share this with you, but I've shared it in other contexts. I can't sleep in a hotel. I mean, I stay at beautiful hotels, 5-star hotels, very clean. I bring my own sheets because a hotel is a cesspool of degeneracy, right? You're sleeping on every bodily fluid imaginable and unimaginable wherever you lay anything in a hotel. I don't know if you've seen the studies where they use, the blue light or whichever light spectrum allows you to see what's there. It's not pretty. And the fact that, I mean, yes, it's worse if you're at a side motel somewhere, but you could be at a 5-star hotel and it'll be nice when your hair on the headboard is swimming in sperm, because that's what's going to happen. So good luck to you. And so I'm unbelievably OCD about cleanliness and so on. So the thought, forgive me for being graphic here, the thought that, it's actually not so bad being number 67 in degeneracy in the long queue of 100 men. I mean, it really defies the realm of the possible for me to say, I hate that word, by the way. I'm going to use the H word, that I am so horny that, you know what? So what if I'm number 3, number 33, or number 91? Let's get it on. Let's have sex with this poor woman. Okay, so that's another one. Then let me now talk a bit about a very important psychometric scale or construct that refers to immediate versus delayed gratification, right? And by the way, I'm thinking at some point of doing an entire show just on this important concept. So immediate gratification would be, I want it now. Delayed gratification, I'm willing to wait for later. And it turns out, of course, that is incredibly predictive of the likelihood of you being able to succeed in life, right? So if I decide to hold off making any income because there's a long educational trajectory that I must go through if I want to become a professor, yes, I can see all of my friends in high school and in university making money now, a lot more money than I'm making while I'm still a graduate student. I'm living in, quite poor, but then I will quickly catch up to you eventually. And maybe eventually I will probably surpass you. And so this ability to modulate your immediate rewards to future delayed gratification predicts many, many phenomena, certainly in consumer behavior and economic decision making and so on. Why am I talking about this? Because what this woman is doing is actually a form of broken calculus when it comes to immediate versus delayed gratification. Because what is she basically saying? My immediate rewards of fame, of money, apparently, I don't know how much she makes, but apparently if you go on her OnlyFans, she makes some obscene amount of money, which, you might say, my God, I write books and I teach students and I supervise graduate students and I serve on review boards of peer-reviewed journals and I apply for grants and I give lectures and all these things. And she probably makes more in a month than I do in a year. But that's Darwin for you, right? People are interested in sex, and so it's much easier to sell sex than it is to sell, intellectual pursuits. But what she said basically is, today, while I'm pretty and sexy and a lot of men want to have sex with me, I don't want to think about the future. I want to pursue the immediate gratification of fame and of money. And actually, at one point, she goes, well, I'm sure that hopefully some guy will in the future want to marry me. Well, you might want to revisit what kind of guys are likely to marry you in the future. And by the way, no, it's not the patriarchy that's causing the future, your future male prospective suitors to say, you know what, I'd rather not be married to a woman who's going to be the mother of my children who got gangbanged by 47,000 men. Maybe that's not what I'm looking for. But I promise you that I would read you a passage about militant feminism. This is on page 32 of the Saad Truth about happiness. Why is it that Lily Phillips felt so empowered by the idea of, you know what, men can do it, women can too. I love sex and I'm sex positive. Yeah, sure. So let me read for you here, page 32 from the Sad Truth about happiness. Militant feminism, which like socialism and communism is something that I would call an idea pathogen, a bad idea that gets transmitted virally, largely by universities, is an ideology that has imparted immeasurable misery on millions of women because it denies human nature and the reality of sexual differences. That men and women should be treated equally under the law, equity feminism, is a veridical position. But militant feminism has pursued the idea of sexual equality to the point of lunacy, arguing that any differences in behaviors between the sexes are manifestations of an evil patriarchy that must be eradicated. Take, for example, the old alleged double standard regarding human sexuality, namely that promiscuous men are admired, whereas promiscuous women are reviled. According to feminist ideology, this is a means by which the patriarchy keeps women in check. Say no to the patriarchy. Burn your bras, engage in meaningless one-night stands, and refrain from having children. Hey, ladies, you are no different from men. And if they are promiscuous, you should be too. Millions of women answered that call, and yet the longitudinal data tracking women's happiness levels have shown that the trends are going in the wrong direction. Specifically, over a 35-year period, women's levels of subjective well-being in the United States have declined, both in an absolute sense as well as relative to men. This is perhaps not too difficult to explain. Convincing women about the virtues of one-night stands is certain to make men happier than women, at least in the short term. Unencumbered sex is seldom a path to happiness for women. It is marriage, which relies on commitment and trust, not promiscuity, that is positively correlated with happiness. This does not imply that women do not at times enjoy the pursuit of unencumbered sexual variety, but they certainly do not do so to the same extent as men. To recognize this obvious evolutionary fact does not make one a patriarchal misogynist, but someone rooted in reality. It is incontestable that many postulates of militant feminism have been detrimental to women's senses of happiness and well-being. The part where I read you that women are not as interested in unencumbered sex stems from a study by David Schmidt, the evolutionary psychologist, who is a former doctoral student of David Buss, who's a good friend of mine, one of the pioneers of evolutionary psychology. He did a study on 48 countries where he administered the SOI. The SOI is a psychometric scale called the SOI. The acronym is sociosexual orientation inventory, meaning some people score highly on their desire for unencumbered sex, some score lower, so there are individual differences within a sex, but what we know is that men score much higher than women on their desire for unencumbered sex as captured by the SOI scale. And in every single one of the 48 countries that were studied, that statement held true. It's a human universal. It's a human universal because it is etched, it is inscribed within our biology, right? So when this woman, this poor, I'm going to call her degenerate because yes, I'm going to pass judgment. When this degenerate decides to have sex with 100 men in preparation of having sex with 1,000 men, she is certainly not pursuing her best pathway to happiness and well-being, as is exactly captured by the raw honesty of the documentary that captured how she looked. She looked like a broken human being, right? I mean, you could see it. And actually, frankly, I felt very bad for her. Now, just to add a measure of degeneracy, apparently her parents are well aware of this and, you know, they support it. Go girl. And her mother apparently is her sort of, I don't know if she's her booker or agent or, you know, businesswoman. What kind of degenerate maniac must you be that you say, you know what would be a great career path for my daughter if she gets destroyed by 100 men. What could be more beautiful than that? Go, girl. You can do it. All right. So that covers some of that part. Let me just mention I'm not going to spend much time on this because I've already covered it elsewhere. There are some very interesting evolutionary explanations for porn. So, for example, it turns out from actual scientific studies conducting a content analysis of porn that polyandry. So let me step back here and explain for a second. Polygamy, which is a term that is typically used for one man with multiple women, is actually a misnomer. Polygamy just means one with many. Polygamy can come in two forms. It could come in the form of polygyny, which is one man, multiple women, or in the form of polyandry, which is one woman, multiple men. Now, a historical study of cultures has found that about 85% of documented cultures have allowed for the expression of polygyny in that society. So meaning that, for example, in Islam, you could have one man with 4 women. Mormonism can have also multiple wives, right? Sister wives. So many cultures, the great majority of cultures throughout history, have allowed some affordance to polygyny. The rest of the cultures have institutionalized monogamy, and an extraordinarily small number of societies, the most famous of which is called fraternal Tibetan polyandry, is where you allow for one woman to be shared by multiple men, but it's called fraternal because the men who share that woman are brothers, meaning that if I can't be assured that the kid is mine, at least let it be from one of my brothers with whom I share on average half my genes. Now, why am I saying all this? Because in pornography aimed at heterosexual men, you end up finding actually a greater depiction of polyandrous sexual encounters more than you do polygynous encounters, meaning you would think that much of porn is going to show one guy with a harem of women. It actually shows the opposite. It shows many more frequent depictions of one woman with multiple guys. And there are interesting evolutionary reasons for that. I won't get into it here. But it's something that I discuss in several of my works. You can go back to my book, my 2011 book, The Consuming Instincts, What Juicy Burgers, Pornography, Ferraris, and Gift Giving Reveal About Human Nature. I may have gotten, it might be, let me just check to make sure. What Juicy Burgers, Ferraris, Pornography, and Gift Giving Reveal About Human Nature. There I discuss some very, very interesting studies that have explored, these kinds of issues. Why am I saying all this? Because even within the context of polyandrous pornographic depictions, it is well beyond the measure of what could be conceived as within the normal range for a woman to be sleeping with 100 men. There is an intimacy to the act. You don't have to be puritanical or a moral Puritan to understand that. There is an intimacy in any sexual act, and you don't have to say, I'm unbelievably morally restrained to actually buy that. When you give up your body to 100 men, no good outcome can come of this. Now, she's already feeling how bad her choices were, as we saw in how broken she was. But if she didn't feel it then, I can assure you that in 5 years or 10 years, she will deeply regret her actions. I can assure you that. You can put all your money on that fact, because it is inconceivable that she can have one day a child where that child walks around in the world and someone finds out that, oh, Your mommy is Lily Phillips, the one who was sloshed by 47,000 men? Oh, that's great. So imagine how selfish you must be that you don't even have the calculus to say, wait a second, the action that I take will have an impact beyond the current immediate time window. How about when I have children in the future? Do you think my current actions might harm them? Lily Phillips doesn't think about that. That's why she's a degenerate pig, as are every single one of those men that said, sign me up for that. They are gargantuan pigs. There you go, folks. I weaved for you some psychology, immediate versus delayed gratification. I hit you with some morality. I hit you with the prescription to not judge is complete nonsense. Walk into the world and judge others. Don't be afraid. Don't be a weak little castrated idiot. We're meant to judge. We're a social species. We judge what's right. We judge what's wrong. That's the problem with why you have lax, punishments when it comes to criminal. Who are we to judge? How do we know what this guy went through in his past? No. You rape children, I cut off your balls, and then I feed you to general population so that they can gang rape you, and then we kill you. Right? Judge. It's healthy. It's normal. It is barbaric to never judge. That's what is barbaric. All right, folks. I'm only at around 3,000 steps. I need to get to at least 15,000 steps. So the next thing I'll be doing is judging myself for my apathy for not having reached 15,000 steps. I'm off to exercise on the treadmill to even become sexier than I already am. And I'm at the zenith of what could be sexy given the svelte build. Wish you all a great day. Protect your kids from making bad decisions. Love to all. Talk to you soon. Cheers, everybody.